Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you can hear me okay. If there's any issues, do put it in the chat. Richard and Nina behind the scenes will pick anything up, any technical questions. Do just bash them in there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on what's hopefully for you a sunny afternoon, as it is for me. We are going to be looking at Ofsted and inspection in 2021 and beyond today. So I'm gonna get started in the session. What I would really like to cover with you is, first of all, thinking about where we are now, how we got there, looking at the education inspection framework, and talking a bit around that, the context behind it. I want to focus a bit on the actual experience between inspection and governance, thinking about how those governing have interacted with inspectors in the past, and the latest we've heard from feedback, including our conversations with Ofsted, which I'll talk to you a bit about in a moment or two. I also want to focus a bit on curriculum and intent today with you. And then I'm going to end up with some practical points and tips from the research that we conducted back in 2019-2020, which is still very relevant, and I'll explain why a bit later. But I'll get moving now. So what I thought would be a good place to start is to think about, well, what you think about Ofsted and what others think. As you can see, while most people agree that Ofsted gets their assessment right of where schools are at, the fact remains that people are very much divided in what role and the value that they think inspection plays in the sector and beyond. I think that the fact remains that Ofsted is a powerful force that can be that can have a huge impact on not just the school but communities. It can have a positive impact, but it can also have a negative impact on entire communities, the development of those communities, house prices, all sorts of things. So Ofsted, as we all know, is really very much a force to be reckoned with. It's something that I know we will all have on our minds at various points throughout the year. And I'd really like to kind of unpick that a little bit today in today's session. We know that there's people out there in the sector who worry about the position that Ofsted have, worry about the high stakes inspection system, the impact that has, how it instills fear perhaps amongst teachers and head teachers and governors and trustees, the impact it can potentially have on well-being and even retention of staff as well. There's lots of different views out there on Ofsted, isn't there? And I think for good reason. We've all had different experience of Ofsted, I'm sure, in the past. So we will gradually unpick some of that in today's session. I wanted to quickly recap on the education inspection framework itself. We have a framework today that very much, as you know, is built around the most weighted judgment of the quality of education. And within that, we find this focus on the three I's: intent, implementation, and impact. Intent is, as we know, that all about that ambition behind what we teach our pupils. Implementation is that curriculum development, how it's developed, how it's taught, and then impact, what is actually delivered in real life, so to speak. So essentially, these days, Ofsted makes a judgment on the depth, the breadth, and the balance of the curriculum. And this is, you know, this framework really did mark a change for the sector. as many of you will remember, it's not old. It came into being, so to speak, in 2019. It seems like a long time ago now, but the framework really only had a term and a little bit before the pandemic hit. So NGA were quite fortunate actually, because we conducted some research during that first term and a bit. So we actually captured a lot of feedback, a lot of knowledge and practice from those inspections during that time, which, despite the fact that was in 2019 and the start of 2020, it's still very relevant, because that's what we have to go off of. So I'll talk you through that in a bit more detail in a moment or two. Changes for September. I think this is something that everybody will be interested in. The transition arrangements for curriculum intent remain in place. Those transition arrangements that were put in place in 2019, which were done as the inspectorate recognised that schools may still be in that transition period with their curriculum, and plans may have been delayed by the pandemic for a number of schools. Ofsted will therefore review these transitional arrangements in March 2022. The priority in light of the pandemic for inspectors is understanding the impact of COVID-19 on the school community, and looking particularly at the response from leaders themselves. So inspectors will ask about any necessary amendments that the school has made in response during that initial preparation phone call that the inspectors have. Inspection intervals have been extended up to 6 terms for the first inspection following the pandemic, and inspections will be carried out on site. There are some elements that can be conducted through video and telephone, and that can actually include those interactions with governors and trustees where absolutely necessary. Although I would recommend going in if you can. I think it's one of those situations where it's probably quite helpful to be there face to face with inspectors wherever possible. I'm going to talk about this slightly later, but I think one of the things to add there is that I know some schools in the past have really planned their response to Ofsted to a fine tuning, and I think sometimes that's caused issues where they've kind of picked one or two individuals from the governing board to go and meet with inspectors, and actually on the day they're not available, and that's left a bit of an issue. So I think, as a general rule, be prepared for anyone on your governing board to go and speak to inspectors, and actually inspectors want to speak to as many governors and trustees as they possibly can. Inspections will be carried out, like I say, on site, but obviously if there are any issues with COVID-19 outbreaks, then they will clearly take that into consideration. There is a deferral policy in place as well. The pandemic increased safeguarding risks, didn't it, for all of our schools? So inspectors will look to consider how school leaders have adapted their approaches to safeguarding during the pandemic, particularly with an eye to thinking about vulnerable pupils, and also thinking about remote education as well. One other new change is around sexual harassment and abuse. Schools deemed not to have adequate processes for sexual harassment and abuse will be considered ineffective. So inspectors will look at how schools are being addressing that and what processes are in place. Ofsted will also report where a school fails to comply with the Baker Clause. So the Baker Clause, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, mandates that schools allow training providers access to their pupils to discuss technical education routes. So where that hasn't been complied with, Ofsted will consider how that affects their grade as well. So that's some of the key changes for for September 2021. Just wanted to touch base on governance and inspection, and some of the practical elements of that. As usual, inspectors will meet with those responsible for governance. That hasn't changed. That meeting should take place without staff present, with all governors and trustees entitled to attend. In reality, it tends to be, you know, a few from the board that go and meet with inspectors. It will explore the contribution that governors and trustees make to the life of the school, including the three core functions. That's what the framework is built on, really. We were very much involved in some of those early discussions. I think in reality, though, the evidence we built up suggests a slightly mixed picture. Those conversations are hugely mixed. Our findings suggest that the link between governance and the curriculum in those discussions, whilst growing, remains inconsistent, and how focused those discussions are on the core functions also is slightly inconsistent. The level of governance appreciation and respect for governance from the inspectors is not totally consistent, I would say. I think that's a fair way of putting it. As an example of that, from the research we did last year and or the year before, 36% of inspectors questioned governing boards on the school strategy and got into conversations about the school strategy. So it's certainly not the majority of conversations with boards went in that direction. There is, however, widespread praise for the conversational nature between inspectors and governors and trustees. I think that was something that was very much a positive. And the majority have had their meeting on the morning of day 2 of the inspection, and that meeting varies in length. Lasted between 15 minutes was the shortest one reported to us, and up to an hour and a half. So obviously that's there's quite a lot of variation there. I think that the majority lasted around about the half an hour mark, so that gives you an indicator, if you haven't been involved in those conversations with inspectors before, how long they're likely to last. Okay, I wanted to move on and talk a bit about curriculum. I've just wanted to talk about curriculum against the backdrop of the pandemic quickly. Your school, in reality, may only be part way through the process of adopting or redeveloping your curriculum. And the inspectorate know this, don't they? They know this. They want to react to that. They want to be fair to that. So they all evaluate your curriculum intent favourably if you can show, if your school can show that it has an accurate evaluative understanding of current curriculum practice in your school, that you've identified appropriate next steps, taken into account any impact of COVID-19, and to improve the curriculum quality in your school. Decisions about remote education is absolutely something that will feature, so just be aware of that. And inspectors will be interested in how you're returning to or bringing about that ambitious curriculum, and that should absolutely be something that is at the heart of our governing board discussions at this point in time. Back in last year, in 2020, we asked governors and trustees who responded to our annual governance survey to rank which factors were influential in the design and provision of their curriculum. And by far the most influential factor was the organisation's vision and strategy, which is really positive. That's what we wanted to see. That's great. Number 2 on the list, perhaps unsurprisingly, was changes to Ofsted. Funding was fairly was a further bit down. So that the vision and strategy and Ofsted were the things that were most influential. And I think this kind of really leads us on to this point around what is being learned? Is that what needs to be learned? Is it worth it? There's a massive challenge for us as governing boards. Um, are we truly championing cultural relevant education in our schools? As part of that intent, as part of those discussions around intent, the board needs to consider how it looks to enhance aspirations and ambition. And we also want to enrich and encourage parental engagement with pupils' learning. So that's something that I think as boards we should be asking if we're doing that. Having those conversations between pupils and their parents around the curriculum. If we can equip that conversation, I think that's a really powerful thing to do. Those conversations, whether that's around the dinner table or in the car, that can have a real profound effect on pupils and the direction that their lives go in. So if we can engage parents in those discussions around curriculum, that's a really, really positive thing, and that says a lot about the ethos of our organisations as well. As you know, and clearly, governing boards are absolutely integral to the ambition behind the curriculum. And intent is all about how driven we are to equip pupils for experiences of later life. And that means very much looking beyond the answers given, assessing whether curriculum planning delivers for all or not. And the board can ensure your school is addressing uncomfortable truths around what it means to be a disadvantaged child, navigating our education system. Does the curriculum do them justice or not? And if not, why is that? Moving on, does the journey to the destination deliver? Are you confident enough to say to Ofsted that we give pupils the tool, the curriculum to unlock their potential? There is a tension here. How do governing boards feed into curriculum intent? So how does that vision, ethos, and values, how are they interjected into the curriculum without us becoming too kind of caught up in the weeds, too incentivized to become increasingly operational through the education inspection framework? And that, I think, is one of the worries that we had before. And I think our research showed that there is some justification behind those worries, because that did start to happen for some people that have been drawn more into those operational discussions. For governing boards to be truly invested in this discussion, there has to be an understanding of the needs for modern day living, the needs of the community, where your school is located, the places your students are likely to live out their days, that big picture stuff. And I know it sounds quite dramatic, but I think it's so important. We need to think about if we're setting up the community for success through what our children are taught. And I think it's quite a powerful thing for us to be able to say to Ofsted, these are we're going big here. We're thinking about the needs of our community. We're thinking about the needs of our pupils and how they can survive when they leave our school and life beyond school gates. What are the challenges faced by pupils who have left our school recently? I think that's quite a big question to ask, when they've gone out to work or where they've not been able to get work. Is the reason they've not been able to get work because we haven't set them up well enough or not? Again, and powerful things for us to show that we are considering. Where are our pupils heading? Where are the passengers heading? There's a big question really here around how far trust can go. Do senior leaders preside over a good curriculum or not, and how do we know that? What do we know about how it's being approached? Knowing your school enables that proactive conversation with Ofsted when they do come. We want to have that with our senior leaders before, and not be left in a murky place with Ofsted and not having the answers. Essentially, our strategic conversations at board level need to focus not just on the vehicle, but also how that vehicle is accessed and through what means. We ask a lot of our children, I think, don't we? Spending all this time in school, will they be able to turn around at the end of it and say to us that all those years have been worth it, or did they essentially have to start from scratch at 18 when they left? Again, I appreciate these are big, not necessarily practical questions, but they are big strategic questions that we can be asking at our board level. Perhaps on a more practical level, I thought I'd just talk a little bit behind some of the considerations around curriculum intent. So this isn't a tick list. These are just ideas that have been pulled through the research we did, that people have told us that they're focused on. But it gives you an idea around some of those strategic conversations we can have that keep us rooted in that right place, that right level, without getting too ingrained within the operational. And this can really help us explain to expectors that we understand our curriculum, we understand the choices behind it, we understand where our school is trying to get to, we understand why we have done what we have done. And again, you'll see that increased parental engagement is on here. I think it's worth saying with all of this, there is no formulaic approach that I think we should be advocating here. These steps shouldn't be done purely for Ofsted benefit. I think, be wary of curriculums that say they do it all, and all you've got to do is click a link and put the money down, and then you're away. Actually, wherever your curriculum is coming from, it's important that it's bespoke and it matches the needs of your school, of your organisation. Just wanted to talk briefly about deep dives, because I know it's still something that many of us will be thinking about. Deep dives are simply part of the methodology for Ofsted getting to where they want to get to in making the decision they want to make, and for understanding the whole curriculum in the form of in-depth examination of a subject, of a group of subjects. And it includes meeting curriculum and subject leads, observing learning, work scrutiny, and talking to children. And I know that some of the governors and trustees that experienced those early inspections under the new education inspection framework have been slightly concerned of some of the nature of those conversations, some of those leading conversations that they felt were had. But I think we've also, for every negative comment we've heard, and that we've heard some real positive ones around the way that inspectors are engaging in a very conversational nature with people at all levels. So whether that's pupils or staff or governors and trustees. Those deep dives will use this evidence to assess if any of the issues are systemic. And I think the conversation that Emma Knights and I had with Ofsted a couple of weeks ago, with one of the directors of Ofsted, was really helpful, and said to us, think of deep dives as a sort of self-evaluation approach. What Ofsted are looking for is both the good and the bad. They're not going to want to just focus on those good subjects. They want to see that there is a good understanding at school level, regardless of the subject. So actually, again, it's important that if you're asked about anything in particular, that you say what you know, but don't go beyond that. If you're asked questions around deep dives and specific detailed day-to-day curriculum areas of focus, if you're worried that is distorting the line between the strategic and the operational, one of the things that the research we did showed us is that actually inspectors were quite open to being told, actually, that's not our remit, kind of back off, not back off, but you know what I mean, sort of kind of show inspectors that you're the ones that know governance, but you're not necessarily curriculum experts. And I think that's important, to be honest. Let's not try and blag our way through conversations that actually we shouldn't be having. So our research, a view from the board, it was a really informative piece. This one, I think, one that we really enjoyed conducting, and it's based essentially on the views of and experiences of governors and trustees who went through inspection during that first term and a bit of the education, the new EIF. And the prevailing view was that everyone was largely supportive of the direction of the framework. Not everyone, but largely there was support for the direction of the framework. That it was better than the old framework. But that statement closely was followed by a fairly long list of caveats that we should address. There was a mixed picture, but with some notable themes. So I think one of the things that's worth acknowledging is the lack of time and engagement inspectors were giving to governing boards, and that was something that lots of people picked up on, and the fact that this is an ambitious framework, and there wasn't quite enough time for inspectors to do what they really needed to do. So often the time spent with governors and trustees was what's the word, squashed. Yeah, I think actually in the refinement of it, that's something that Ofsted can be looking at. We've shared all of these findings with them, and they were very open to that. The channel of questioning itself, the way in which the use of first-hand evidence collection sets the scene, again, was quite inconsistent. Some governors and trustees did have really in-depth conversations around curriculum intent, others didn't. Some did have conversations around the core functions, others didn't. Some would simply ask one question about one subject, and that was it. One of the pieces of feedback we had was that quite a lot of the line of questioning was dictated by what inspectors had been finding on that first day of inspection. So that will lead some of those conversations with governors and trustees on which tends to be, like I say, on day 2. So just things to be aware of that. If you haven't read this report, it is on our website. Do take a look at it. This is just a quick. Just wanted to give you a quick flavour of what some people had said. As you can see, really mixed. These what I should have said earlier. Actually, these slides will. You can have a look at these slides on the handout option, and you'll be getting these. So if you don't have time to quickly scan through those now, you can come back to those later. As I kind of start to bring this to a close, I wanted to focus a little bit on the feedback sessions and the Ofsted reports. I've called this the good and the not so good. The feedback sessions being the good bit, the reports, in our view, and certainly the view and lots of people we've spoken to, and other organisations within the sector, being the not so good parts. The final interaction that the governing boards have with inspectors is in that feedback meeting, and that's one element of the inspection process that is widely seen as a real improvement. You absolutely must get those sessions clocked. That was something that NGA was lobbied for, and we were successful. Really happy that they put that change. And the reason that's so important is that feedback meeting is that treasure trove of information that for governing boards and leaders. That information will be presented in a way that isn't often, our experience suggests, isn't then replicated in the reports itself. So those feedback sessions will go into that level of detail. So absolutely get a record of that. Use that time. Those meetings were very much seen as being fluid, robust conversations that did, by and large, often talk about governance within that leadership and management capacity, but really informative for everyone that joined those. The reports, on the other hand, we looked at 844 reports, so quite a lot, and we assessed these. Governance was not captured in a meaningful or helpful way for the vast majority of those. The one or two that did were real outliers, to be honest. That aim to meet the perceived needs of parents through making that primary audience has kind of disadvantaged the substance of what is said in the actual reports themselves. That's something that we've fed back to Ofsted. I know others have. I'm not particularly confident that will change, certainly not anytime soon, but it's worth you being aware of that if you weren't already. Don't be surprised when you get your report and it really doesn't capture what you think it's going to do. So as I finish, the message really for 2021 and 2022 and beyond is that the education inspection framework is actually very much a framework built for these times. We've lost data sets, yes. We've got skewed data sets now, but we now have a framework that in theory is not reliant on data in the way that previous frameworks were. The IEF is a framework that generally, it's acknowledged, has a lot of potential, but there simply hasn't been the time to really test it out and refine it. and Ofsted acknowledge this. They acknowledge it's a work in progress. Clearly, there may well be some more bumps along the way to refining it, but don't assume that it's all completely there and sorted. And obviously, inspectors now have even more to look at with the how schools have adapted and reacted to COVID as well. So there's been some, the process has been tested during the summer term. It's been largely well received, but the message from both Ofsted and us really is don't aim to please Ofsted, aim for what is best for your school, for your pupils. There is essentially no such thing as doing things the Ofsted way. At least that's what should be the case. You know, if you're told otherwise, challenge it. When the board is talking vision, talk curriculum and its intent. And even if inspectors don't ask you about it, tell them about it, and just be upfront with that. What we are told inspectors will care about is, you know, how you are learning, how you understand it, how you're responding to the situation, the context that you find yourself in today. So my final slide is really just a few top tips that we pulled together from the research that we did. Don't do anything just for Ofsted's benefit. Number one, you know, if why are we doing this is because of Ofsted, then really it's time to rethink. Number two, don't let preparation generate extra workload. Let's be honest and open about the fact that inspection, just by definition of what inspection is, regardless of sector, is stressful. You know, we can put any sort of spin on it that we want to. It would always be stressful. It will always be a source of anxiety. However we're preparing for it, let's make sure that it's not generating that extra workload for our leaders. Number three, know what to expect. Read NGA's guidance, undertake our Learning Link module. We're about to release a brand new Learning Link module on Ofsted, and the process to have a look at that when that comes out in the autumn. Number four, think of each inspection really as free consultancy. You know, it's a huge process, I know. There's a lot to learn from it, and to keep that conversation going after the process as well. Use those notes from that feedback session as you do that. Number five, be confident that you are where you are. Be confident that your self-evaluation is robust and accurate before you go into the process. Don't blag when you're with inspectors. You know, don't say the things that you think that they want to hear, which isn't an accurate reflection. Actually stick to what you know, stick to what you're confident in. I think that's really, really key. Number six, know where you're going. Give inspectors a clear picture for the future. Be confident in it. Tell inspectors what it is you're going to achieve and why. I think inspectors like it when governors and trustees and leaders generally are confident and know what it is they're really aiming for. Number seven, know your governing board. Show inspectors you know way more about governance and what good governance is than they do. Where governance is strong, organisations don't fail. You know, that's simple. That's simple words of truth. So let's convey that message to inspectors and to the inspectorate. Number eight, be clear about your role. You know, as our research showed, not all inspections are totally confident. Not all inspectors are totally clear always on the appropriate strategic operational divide. That's something that the research showed us. So, you know, if you need to point that out, don't be afraid to do that. Number nine, consider who meets inspectors. You need to plan not on the basis of your top team, your hit squad, you know, from your governing board. Like I was saying earlier, that they just because they're the most seasoned people on the board in terms of Ofsted inspections, actually chances are they might not be available on the day. So prepare much more widely than that. And finally, number 10, think about anything that you need to present to Ofsted. I'm not saying that they'll necessarily ask for this, but have it to hand, even if it's just for your benefit. Thank you so much for joining me today, listening to that. Like I say, the slides are available. This will be recorded if you did want to look at it again. do have a look at our guidance. Do check that Learn Link module when it comes out. And yeah, I'll leave you to it. Leave it to your afternoon. Hope you all have a good rest of the week. Thank you.